वेलकम सुनील जी, और आपके पैनलिस्ट को आप खुद वेलकम करेंगे तो बहुत अच्छा लगेगा.
The most energetic person in this room.
Let me invite Ravindra sir, please be a part of this panel. I request Anand Mridul sir to join with architect Sanjeev Gupte sir, architect Venu Gopal, architect Niruttam Singh sir and Rajendra Mantri sir. We'll be talking about heritage architecture or context हमारा राजस्थान है. So Rajasthan architecture has this Rajput school of architecture बहुत पॉपुलर है यहाँ पर. एस्टोनिशिंग फोर्ट्स और हमारे एनग्रेव्ड टेम्पल्स, जैसा अभी रविंद्र सर ने बताया, आर बिग इंस्पिरेशंस फॉर ऑल ऑफ अस टू इम्प्लीमेंट इन आवर मॉडर्न डे आर्किटेक्चरल डिजाइन. सो लेट अस अंडरस्टैंड व्हाट आर दीज. सो कैन यू गेस व्हाट इज दिस स्लाइड फ्रॉम, वेयर दिस स्लाइड इज फ्रॉम? कैन यू गेस? जल्दी बोलेंगे तो अच्छा रहेगा. ओके, नो प्रॉब्लम. ओके, इट्स फ्रॉम मंडोर. जोधपुर के लोग हैं यहाँ पर? सर आप शायद देख नहीं पाए इसलिए नहीं. ये आपने देखा है सर ये? अच्छा, आप बोलते, ये कोई गेस कर सकता है? इनको किसी को चॉकलेट दो यार, ऐसे हैं. चॉकलेट पहुंचाओ जल्दी से. सबने बताया है, जो हाथ खड़ा करे उसको दे दो. ओके, ये गेस करेंगे? और नाहरगढ़ कौन बोला है? हाँ, उनको नहीं मिलेगा. ओके, आमिर कौन बोला? उसको मिलेगा. ओके, ये कौन सा है? ये थोड़ा रेयर पिक्चर है. श्योर? ओके, सो दिस इज चित्तौड़गढ़. भाई ये चॉकलेट बटने में बहुत देरी हो रही है, ऐसा लग रहा है. ये पहचानेंगे? बीकानेर, या एक आया इधर से. यस 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 यस. ओके, ये पहचानेंगे क्या? ये हमारा उदयपुर. ये पहचानेंगे क्या? इसमें पूरा बंच मिलेगा. दिस इज सुल्तान बावड़ी. दिस वाज रेस्टोर्ड बाय हमारे उदयपुर के आर्किटेक्ट्स की टीम से, एंड वी रेस्टोर्ड एन ओल्ड बावड़ी. दिस इज सुल्तान बावड़ी. And so this is the heritage of Rajasthan that we were talking about. Ravindra sir, you talked about relevance of heritage in architecture. Now what do we do with the proportions? I mean, you mentioned that you recreated those tiles. Okay. तो मैं ये जानना चाहता हूँ कि वो जब टाइल जिस आर्टिसन ने 300 साल पहले बनाया, उसके पहले क्या एग्जिस्ट करता था कि he got inspired? So why you got inspired from those tiles which happened 300 years back?
We have this ideation called morphology in architecture, right? We all learn that out of college, where there is a transformation from one particular point of idea, and you bring change to that idea. You morph that idea. You develop that idea. And then you reincorporate new layers to it, but you always have the connect to the origin. So this is how we all do architecture. We always learn from what we perceive and connect and visually experience. And for me, morphology is very, very important. And the emphasis of that act of how you develop from the origin a heritage to what you build today, you need to have a connect to context. And all of us think of this great future, a great tomorrow where there'll be cars flying in the air, you know, there will be, everything will be Wi-Fi connected, there'll be a chip in our brain which makes us, you know, remember everything impeccably, perfectly well. I think all that for me is nonsense. For me, past forward is better. Every time I think of the world, what my great-grandfathers lived was much more beautiful than what we'll all live.
Should time not be given? Is time not a factor, sir?
No, absolutely. I don't think we must shy away from the aspect of presenting what we live today to the new world, and experience the idea of technology and experience the architectural sort of making to bring that expression of what we all live today in the world. But it doesn't mean that we must make alien looking buildings. I had a great mentor, Made Vijaya from Australia. He was one of my greatest friends and tutors, and he used to always look at some of my drawings and says, Ravi, this looks like a washing machine. He would say that, you know. And we don't have to make buildings look weird. I think that is very, very important. And just for the heck of wanting to be iconic. And it does not have to look space age. You know, if you look at the nature, it has so many answers to how architecture happens. For example, if you look at a mountain, a leaf, a tree, or a plant, or anything that is static is always asymmetric. It's always asymmetric. You take even the mammoth of a tree, it comes with so many leaves in an asymmetric composition to bring in a sense of order. And anything that is mobile, like us, human beings, or an animal, or a car, a bike, a scooter, an aircraft, is always symmetric.
Yeah.
You know, and these are certain simple laws how nature dictates how we must understand the inspirations of composition. I'm just giving you one connect, but there are so many things that we have so much to learn from how world is made by His sort of Almighty. So I think that experience is what is important in our connect to morphology and to historicity.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much, sir. Thanks a lot. Yeah. Niruttam sir, आपसे सवाल है. What elements you feel are easiest to use when it comes to taking inspiration from heritage architecture? Like sir did that temple का plinth. So what is your experience? What is your take on this?
कंजर्वेशन जो होता है, हम लोगों ने भी एक होटल बनाया टोरडी में, टोंक के पास. तो वहाँ हमने क्या किया है कि बीकानेर की जो हवेली के टूटे हुए पार्ट्स थे, इनके जो झरोका थे, इनके जो दासे वगैरह थे, उन सबको हमने जब वो टूट रहे थे तो उनको इकट्ठा किया और क्लाइंट को मैंने बोला अपन इसको रीयूज़ करेंगे. उस सारे एलिमेंट्स को लाके, उनके फोटोग्राफ्स लाके हमने उस बिल्डिंग में उसको इम्प्लांट किया. उसमें इतनी अच्छी कार्विंग थी, अराउंड 300 ईयर्स अगो की जो बनी हुई थी, मेन मेड जो थी. अब उस बिल्डिंग को देखते हैं तो खुशी होती है, जैसे उसमें प्रॉपर स्केल हमने यूज़ किया, प्रॉपर एलिमेंट्स यूज़ किए. फिर उसके साथ हमने इसके कलर वगैरह जो थीम थी, फ्लोरिंग थीम थी, जो मड टाइल्स थी, तो एक कंजर्वेशन अपन साथ में लेके चलें तो ज़्यादा अच्छा है, रादर देन कि अपन नया कंस्ट्रक्शन में जाएं.
So thank you very much, Niruttam sir. Gupte sir, you are a teacher to many of us, okay, and many students also. How do we handle those proportions? मुझे लगता है it is more of a vendor driven. मुझे कोई अगर गोखड़ा लगाना है तो मैं वो वेंडर को बोलूँगा, वो बोलेगा ये नाप का यही छज्जा अवेलेबल है, ये नाप का यही आर्च अवेलेबल है, एंड वी जस्ट टेंड टू गेट इंस्पायर्ड एंड उससे हम यूज़ करते हैं.
अगर हम हेरिटेज की बात करें तो उसमें प्रिजर्वेशन सबसे बड़ा, दैट इज द की टू heritage. So heritage means what is already there and we are preserving. That is my understanding of it.
Sir, how do we learn the proportions? I mean, is there anyone who can guide us on this, or what is?
You have to copy.
Yes.
You have to scale. Whether you take something authentic, first you have to decide कि what is authentic. पहले किसने बनाया, कैसे बनाया, उसका history देखना बहुत जरूरी है. So if you don't have a history, तो I don't think we should be copying. What is new and what can be built later on can also be equally good or better than what is existing. But that doesn't mean कि that is heritage. Heritage means what we have acquired. That is heritage. It has to have a history. So you cannot start without any starting point for that. हम तो जाए जो बना हुआ है और उसको पता है कि इसका तुम स्केल कर दो, ये हमारे लिए एक गाइडलाइन है.
Right.
That is a pilot thing and you develop from that.
Right. Okay. Thank you, sir.
Many years back when I was walking through the Louvre Museum, I did a workshop there, look at the art and understand appreciation of art. For 5 days we had a workshop. And I remember one of the professors there was telling us that it's so important that you have to learn the language of appreciation or art to only understand and then critique. So the same way even in architecture, I think all of us have to go through that rigorous practice to learn to understand composition and understand the right idea of proportion from historicity and also what we draw. So it is a language. If I speak to you in French, you will not understand. And if I speak French poetry, you will not understand unless you know the semantics of language. So the same way for us, proportions and the nature of composition is we have to learn from historicity. And we have to get that craft, like a carpenter or a karigari who is working on marble or on sandstone, understands to do that fine craft only out of rigorous practice. So for all architects, it's very important that we have to practice. And that's one of the reasons why the person who actually started the National Association of Students of Architecture, which became Indian Institute of Architects, it changed its name. If you go back and look at the net, you will read it. The gentleman who started that resigned the day it was changed, the name was changed. He said we're all still learning. And for us, it's so important to learn the craft, to appreciate and critique, and to learn proportion.
Thank you, sir. Thanks a lot for the insight. Anand sir, आपके लिए सवाल है. You have designed a Baudi, and why a Baudi now? Because Baudi had lot of cultural relevance. उस time में it was the cultural center also of temple के बाजू में होता था, source of water also, and Baudi में travelers used to rest and all. Is it happening today? So why a Baudi today? And what was the context here?
So the thing is, why not a Baudi today? The need for collecting locally available water is still there. It's in fact more pronounced than it was at some point of time. The cultural manifestations where, you could consider a well or a containment of water, just an infrastructure. The moment you connect it culturally, it becomes a piece of architecture. So, what you call shared resources. So you have, say, a containment for water, but you start using it culturally. You have people sitting there for leisure. There was a time when women probably didn't have a place to go to, and Bawdi would be the only place where they would meet in the afternoon. They would go fetch water and all that. So one can understand that now the water is being tapped to home. You don't need to go and fetch water. In fact, water is being delivered to you. But at the same time, if you see the water stress in India, I personally feel we do not actually have scarcity of water. It is a problem of management of water, which we used to do very well at one point of time. Now what has happened, and I would be talking about it, is that more and more we are depending on larger infrastructure. What ideally should have happened is that what you're doing is, for instance, you have, say, a Jawai Bandh, for instance, you have a few kilometers from here. And there are certain cities and certain towns where you're fetching water all the way from Jawai Bandh to those cities. Now what happens if it doesn't rain in Jawai Bandh? Which means all those cities will not get water. Whereas originally they would not have to depend on a remote source. They would always collect the local water. They would always have sources. So they would have the Bawdis, they would have the Pokers, and you just name it. I mean, agar aap dekhiye Rajasthan mein, even a cloud is, so revered, and it has got maybe having 100 different names to call it from. Because water was the lifeline then, water is the lifeline today. So now what has happened is that it actually happens, Rajasthan getting a lot of water from Punjab. And there are a lot of, interstate disputes which are happening. They will give you certain share, they will not give you certain share. Then what do? Because you have completely abandoned your heritage water architecture. They are all going into dilapidation, they are ruining. But if you had them over there, and if you had complemented it, I'm not saying that you can just depend on this. You could use them to complement the larger infrastructure. And so, if you don't get water from those areas, you could fetch water from here. And at the same time, I would say that these are not enough to feed a city because the population has increased. But you're completely ignoring what is falling on your land. You have water with you, but you're not collecting it. So it is still relevant to do. So what we did was for a township. We don't have enough water. And the water table over there is 300 feet. And that is also brackish water. So if you have to create a micro environment where there are a lot of verdures, there's a lot of greenery, if you want to change the microclimate over there, you need water. And we did not want to lay stress on the government. So we created a water body. We learned from the past. We invoked the ancient wisdom, and that's why we created. That is one part of.
How is it being used today? I mean,
so
by
we are
the inhabitants.
We are collecting rainwater over there.
Okay.
So we actually designed it. We have stormwater drains coming from all sides. It's the lowermost portion.
So people go there right up to the water.
So like Bawdis would have steps because water would rise and recede. So you couldn't go down and fetch. In this case, we have fashioned it as a Bawdi.
Okay.
It looks very beautiful, and when the water recedes, you've used enough water from there, then you can actually go down, touch water, and that's how we've done it. And it's being used culturally. We've designed it in a manner that people come. For instance, 24th of this month, they're having a Kathak dance performance over there.
Yeah.
So it's still culturally connected.
Yeah. Even we did a small music event here when we restored this Bawdi. Bawdi, I mean, I'm just taking this one as one point of inspiration from heritage architecture actually. So thank you sir, and I'm sure वो image हम देखेंगे तो everybody will be thrilled to see कि how you can create a Bawdi today also. मंत्री सर, स्पीड के बारे में आते हैं तो यूजिंग हेरिटेज आर्किटेक्चरल डिटेलिंग, लाइम एंड सीमेंट, हाउ टू विन ओवर सीमेंट इफ एज अगेन रविंद्र सर सेड कि कंक्रीट सबसे बड़ा हमारा दुश्मन है. सो हाउ डू वी हैंडल दिस सर?
Sorry, I didn't
सर
get you exactly.
अभी लाइम पुराने ज़माने में हेरिटेज डिटेल होता था. ओके, हेरिटेज आर्किटेक्चर में पुराना आर्किटेक्चर में लाइम वॉज यूज एज अ बाइंडिंग मटेरियल. करेक्ट मी इफ आई एम रॉन्ग. Is that right?
True, yeah.
So now, how do we get those details back into today's times? Many people are experimenting on that. So can you just guide us, if you can, on certain applications, how to replace this cement with something like lime today? Can we have some insights into this? If you have an experience of doing this.
Actually, I mean, in terms of, as you said, like replace, that I would say is not possible because of the type of construction we have. So we need cement, steel and all that because high-rise buildings and all the new constructions and all. But yeah, definitely as everybody agrees with that. And what is heritage? Heritage is what basically comes from history and our culture. So we have to learn from that. So basically
Okay, so we learned the technique, not the exact application, the spirit behind what happened that day. Is that you want to say?
Yeah, to some extent, yes, definitely, yeah. Yeah, because the applications now with lime, because you see the time factor is very important these days. Now, like Ravindra Kumar ji का हमने देखा इतना बढ़िया presentation, the way he has use the material, I mean, that's excellent. But what heritage is what? Basically, it's about environment. It's about energy, conserving energy. Like we see our old architecture with courtyards, with heavy walls. Now we have a limitation of space. Now, so we have to tackle that. That's very important.
You have to handle that FSI thing today. Yeah, please, sir, please.
So I think you must do a workshop on lime, and you will realize that if you just compare two things, the carbon footprint which you get out of making cement, and not only cement, packaging cement also, and the carbon footprint out of lime, you would definitely want to use lime as much as possible. Lime has its limitations, all right, but you see the lime cycle from calcium carbonate, how it comes back to calcium carbonate. एक कहावत है राजस्थान में कि चूना 50 साल लगता है जवान होने में. So there is a reason behind it. You know, when you are slaking lime, it gives off carbon dioxide, but it takes about 50 years to regain it and comes back to its original position, its original composition of calcium carbonate. So if you learn about it, if you do a workshop, you would definitely, because we have managed to do buildings just using lime mortar, not using a speck of cement. Yeah, carbon footprint is very less than that.
In fact, even the Bowring Institute that I showed you, that heritage building, which is almost 110,000 square feet, completely was done out of slaked lime, processed at site. What he says is absolutely accurate. We did not use cement. Cement also has content primarily of lime, but the problem is that you burn it at 3,600 degrees Kelvin, power temperature, where you consume tremendous amount of energy to actually, bring that into a composition of cement using resins and chemicals. Whereas natural lime, and trust me, it has survived 134 years. It's going to now survive for another 248 years plus, till somebody else wants to renovate and do something with it. So that it is possible. It's unfortunate that that material is not easily accessible, or the technology is dying away. So we need to look at a wake-up call. I'm not saying you can do that for Burj Khalifa or something like that, but it is, the applications have potentials, and we must explore that divinity.
So Venu ji, last सवाल है ना, before we end this. I after listening to all these traditional methods, traditional design elements, do you have any such experience of experiencing guilt because कि यार ये मैं कर सकता था उसमें, I had the space, I could have done thicker walls in stone, I could have used lime. Did you ever come across such a feeling? I mean,
no, I don't generally regret like this. I don't see the past, I see the future. Somebody has done it, leave it. I need to do it better. This is what I do. But when coming to, listening to all the questions, what I could see is like heritage and traditional architecture is more about mathematics. This is what I could see.
More about?
Mathematics.
Mathematics, okay.
It's mostly the proportions which are coming, or all of us, there's a series called Fibonacci series. If you really study that Fibonacci series, that is, the formulas are actually hidden there in it. If you take the traditional architecture of Rajasthan, any Mewadi, Marwadi, Shekhawati, whatever it is, all these have certain parameters and certain patterns which fall into that category. If you take the Moorish arches, generally what the elements I use is mostly the arches and the jharokas. You have different types of jharokas. You call it as a Jaipuri jharoka or a Rajasthani or a Mewadi jharoka. They have a different essence, although the character is the same thing, built by different people and with a different style of textures. Fine, the stone is being different. but the essence is the same. If you take out the entire Rajasthani traditional architectural essence, the essence has the same blood. I mean, it is all O positive mostly, right? And I see that the mathematical proportions are not changing. I mean, designing a Jaroka, maybe a bigger Jaroka or a smaller Jaroka. You asked one, we are depending on the vendors. What I feel is like, even I go to a vendor, I see that the proportions are not lost. Maybe I'm making it bigger or smaller. The proportions are not lost, and the mathematical logic behind it should not differ. The beauty will not differ. I mean, that's how the beauty pageant is done. This is to this ratio. The ratios should be in the same proportion. If that is done, I think things will fall in place.
Thank you, Venu, and you answered on your expertise in mathematics basically, और बहुत अच्छे से समझ में आया हमको.